Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi fiqh class. We are doing the kitab known as I'a'la Sunan of Maulana Zafar Ahmad Zanbi rahimahullah. We are dealing now with the chapters regarding different types of water and what makes water impure and things of that sort. We had completed the chapter with regards to wudu and ghusl and things of that sort. So we are starting on to page 266 tonight, inshaAllah ta'ala. So let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Actually, before we begin, somebody came and was listening to the previous class and had some questions which was asked, which were good questions all, and it actually relates to tonight's class. So, you know, it was preempting the class. I should probably have mentioned it, but anyway, because we were planning on doing the next class, so that's why we didn't exactly touch on those points. Number one was that, you know, in modern context, you know, you've got splash pools and things of this sort. So you've got a splash pool and a bird falls in it and it dies. Is it pure or impure? Remember, we were doing last week the chapter with regards to a small body of water which is still, and you know, a creature falls in it and dies, then the water becomes impure. So splash pools, yes. If an animal were to fall in it and die, not to fall in it, but fall in it and die, in that case, the water becomes impure and the splash pool has to be emptied and refilled again. Likewise, if it's a little koi pond type thing, that small bodies of water is regarded as being impure in such a case. That was the one thing. The second thing is, which is something which we're still going to come to, animals, or actually, at least I should say, creatures that live in water, if they fall, not fall, but if they die in water, it doesn't affect the water at all. So frogs, while the fact that the frog can live outside the water, but it also lives inside the water. Likewise, crabs and lobsters and stuff like this here. Let's assume you happen to be having your own crabs in your yard, in your koi pond, so to speak. So if for example, your pet frog and your pet lobster over here died in the water, that will not affect the water because it is deemed as being a creature of water in any case. So that's that point. The next one with regards to how big is regarded as a big quantity, or contrary to what we were dealing with, a small body of water. So with regards to a large body of water, the word used in the hadith is Qullatayn. And we'll still come to this point in future, inshallah. But Qullatayn is the word that when water reaches an amount known as Qullatayn, in that case, the water does not become impure, except if its qualities change, like the color, the taste, and smell. But generally, unless it's reached Qullatayn, it's still of a small nature. So Qullatayn is a point of difference of opinion amongst the four madhahib. Each one has their own viewpoints in that regard. Shafi'i and Hanbali madhab are of a similar viewpoint. The Maliki madhab is of a viewpoint that unless the water changes, even if it's a smaller quantity, unless the qualities of the water change, then it's regarded as being pure. So your splash pool would be pure if, for example, one drop of blood were to fall in it and you don't smell, see, or taste the blood in the water. In that case, a view in the Maliki madhab, because I do not know if this is the actual muftabihi of the Maliki madhab, but I'm just mentioning the various viewpoints for you anyway. So the Shafi'i and Hanbali madhabs, when they come to Qullatayn, then some people now use it in gallons. So for example, say 50 gallons worth of water, then they would now deem that as being Qullatayn. And you'll find differences even amongst them with regards to that amount, but you know, if it reaches that amount. Then for the Hanafi madhab, we say Qullatayn is such a large body of water, and within the Hanafi madhab itself, we've got multiple viewpoints as to defining a large body of water. So some of the Hanafi ulama say that, for example, let's say you've got a Olympic-sized swimming pool, and if you were to cause ripples on this side, the ripples wouldn't travel across to the other end because it's a big pool. In this case, it's deemed as being a big body of water, so it doesn't count. I mean, it doesn't count as being small. So unless the characteristics of the change, taste, smell, and color changes, in this case, that Olympic-sized swimming pool will be pure. Reason why I keep mentioning swimming pools is because, unfortunately, a public swimming pool is synonymous with a public toilet, because it's become in fact, it is common knowledge that a lot of people, they get in a pool and then, it's like they lose control of themselves, or they think, well, nobody can see right now, and they just let it rip over there in the pool. So obviously that's a bulk of impurity entering into the water. Now, if you've got this huge quantity of water, then this Olympic-sized swimming pool would not be deemed as being impure, unless you can now smell the stench from the water, or you happen to jump in the water next to swim, and you are so unfortunate to have the water enter your mouth, and now you're tasting, what on earth is this? In that case, or it happens to be such a bad case that the water turns yellow. In this case here, the quality has changed and the water is impure, despite the fact that it is big. So, we'll deal with that of a Qullatayn at a later stage, but just so you have a introductory bird's eye view of the matter at hand. So anyway, that was what I had explained in that audio, so I thought, let me just clarify it in class as well for future. Anyway, let us begin now. The chapter we're starting tonight is باب طهارة الماء الكثير إلا عند تغير لونه أو ريحه أو طعمه. The chapter that a large body of water is pure except if its color, its smell, or its taste has changed. So let's see firstly what the hadith mentions. Hadith number 220. حدثنا محمد بن الحجاج قال حدثنا علي بن معبد قال حدثنا عيسى بن يونس عن الأحوص بن حكيم عن راشد بن سعد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الماء لا ينجسه شيء إلا ما غلب على لونه أو طعمه أو ريحه. رواه الطحاوي وفي التلخيص والحبير، ورواه الطحاوي والدارقطني من طريق راشد بن سعد مرسلا بلفظ الماء لا ينجسه شيء إلا ما غلب على ريحه أو طعمه، زاد الطحاوي أو لونه. وصحح أبو حاتم إرساله. Okay, so this narration is reported by Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hajjaj from Ali ibn Ma'bad, from Isa ibn Yunus, from Al-Ahwas ibn Hakim, from Rashid ibn Sa'ad, who's not a Sahabi, he's a Tabi'i. So obviously he's missing out the name of the Sahabi he heard it from. So he said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Al-ma'u la yunajjisuhu shay'un, that water is not made impure by anything إلا ما غلب على لونه أو طعمه أو ريحه, except when if its color, taste, or smell is overpowered, which I just was explaining now a moment ago, that if you have the water and this large quantity of water and the color changes, maybe some blood fell in the water and the water became red now, or you can smell the blood from the water, or you can taste the blood in the water, for example, then that water is impure. Now, if you notice that the hadith over here, it simply says water. It didn't clarify amounts and stuff like this. So it is from a hadith like this that Imam Malik rahimahullah gets his viewpoint to say that it applies across the board to all different types of water. But there is the other hadith, إذا بلغ الماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, which is the viewpoint, the hadith that the other madhahib now use, that when water reaches the level of being qullatayn, then it does not become impure. Now qullatayn, like I said, the ikhtilaf between the madhahib, but so you understand where the Maliki madhab gets theirs from and where we get our proof from. And so how do we answer Imam Malik on that? We say that the hadith here in question, that water is not made impure by anything, we say that this hadith is now referring to Qullatayn as well, because when we have two ahadith, and this is a principle of usul al-hadith anyway, usul is principle anyway, but it's a principle of hadith that when you have two ahadith which are seemingly contradictory, they are not contradictory, but they seem to contradict one another. Like you can see here, one say water, one say when water reaches qullatayn. So they're not exactly saying the same thing. So therefore, we do jama'a between the riwayat. We try and find common ground between them so that we remove the apparent contradiction. So the way we do it, where we say that this hadith is also referring to Qullatayn. So Qullatayn is the principle, the standard rule. And this hadith now fits in with Qullatayn, in which case we've managed to say both hadith as being authentic and reliable and practiced upon without there being any contradiction between them. So that's how you do jama' bain al-riwayat. But anyway, so if one of its three qualities changes. Imam Tahawi rahimahullah narrates this particular hadith. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentioned in At-Talkhis al-Habir that Imam Tahawi and Imam Darul rahimahumullah both report this hadith from Rashid ibn Sa'ad in a mursal form, and the words are Al-ma'u la yunajjisuhu shay, that water is not made impure by anything illa ma ghalaba ala rihihi aw ta'mi. And this is the narration of Imam Ad-Darul rahimahullah, that water is not made impure by anything except when its smell or taste is overpowered. So the narration of Imam Ad-Darul made mention of two things. The narration of Imam Al-Tahawi added in the third. So like we just did above, لونه أو طعمه أو ريحه, its color, its taste, and its smell. And Imam Abu Hatim rahimahullah, he said that it is mursal, which is it's authentically proven as being mursal. Now Maulana Zafar Ahmad Khan, he comments, he says المرسل بشروطه حجة عندنا وهو كذلك. He says that a hadith which is mursal, which we've done many times before, it means where a tabi'i is narrating a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which by its very definition tells you that somebody is missing. Now the thing is that a tabi'i can be narrating directly can be leaving out simply one sahabi. He can be leaving out two sahaba. Maybe he heard it from one sahabi who heard from another sahabi who heard from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there can be two people missing from the chain, or there can be even more. The tabi'i could have heard from two tabi'in who then heard from a sahabi who heard from another sahabi who heard from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you understand that there can be multiple missing people in the chain. Now the thing is that if we don't know the sahaba in the chain, that doesn't matter. As-sahabatu kulluhum adul, all of the sahaba radiyallahu anhum are trustworthy and reliable, and every hadith that they tell us is accepted. That's there in its place. When it comes to the tabi'in themselves, amongst the tabi'in, obviously there are various levels, but when we have them, you see what it says, bishurutihi, what its conditions. So we may mention that when it is from the high level tabi'in, for example, Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah, if he narrates and it says Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, we know for a fact that he never met Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he can't be narrating directly. But a lot of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were alive during his time. So he heard from a Sahabi who heard from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he just speaks it in his words as if he heard Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I mean, if you hear me or anybody in a lecture, we don't say, I heard from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so, and give our whole chain back to Imam Bukhari, back to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We don't do it. We just say, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said. And we know how many people are in our chain between myself and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So obviously, it doesn't exactly mean that because I say Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said something that I am claiming to have heard it directly from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But anyway, the narration is still mursal nonetheless. But for us and the Maliki madhab, for us a mursal which is on that level is regarded totally authentic, reliable. You don't have an issue. You can make amal upon it. Move on. Hadith number 221. عن أبي أمامة الباهلي رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: لا ينجس الماء شيء إلا ما غير ريحه أو طعمه. رواه الطبراني في الأوسط والكبير، وله عند ابن ماجه إلا ما غلب على ريحه وطعمه ولونه. وفيه رشدين بن سعد وهو ضعيف. قلت وثقه الهيثم بن خارجة كما في تهذيب التهذيب، والاختلاف غير مضر كما عرف مرارا، لا سيما إذا تأيد الحديث بالمرسل الصحيح. Hazrat Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu narrates from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam who said that water is not made impure by anything except if its smell or taste changes. Imam Tabarani rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith. He reports it in Al-Mu'jam al-Awsat and in Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir. And Imam Ibn Majah rahimahullah in his Sunan, he also reports this narration, except his wording is إِلَّا مَا غَلَبَ عَلَى رِيحِهِ, except if it overpowers the smell, the taste, or the color. And in this chain of narration of Imam Ibn Majah is a narrator by the name of Rishdin ibn Sa'ad. Rishdin ibn Sa'ad is graded generally, for the most part amongst the muhaddithin, as being a weak narrator. Now, weak narrator as in the sense, for example, not a liar. A weak narrator can be a person who's pious, but he don't have a strong memory. A person who's a good alim and everything, but he lost his book, so he started narrating from memory and he started making mistakes, etc., etc. So that those people, pious as they may be, but it doesn't change the fact that as far as hadith and preservation is concerned, muhaddithin say, we have to draw a line here because you are but on the weak side. We cannot make certain that every word you are telling us were the words of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how the usul of hadith at least goes. So he said that Rishdin ibn Sa'ad is a weak narrator. But Maulana Zafar Ahmad Tanvi rahimahullah, he now comments and he says that Rishdin ibn Sa'ad has been graded as being thiqa, reliable, by Al-Haytham ibn Kharija. Like how it's mentioned in Tahdhib al-Tahdhib. And on account of this, as you know, when you find one muhaddith grading somebody as being weak and the other one grading as being reliable, then it's not exactly an issue. He says, we touched on this point many times already. But moreover than this is the fact that you have a narration where there's a mukhtalaf fih narrator, Rishdin ibn Sa'ad. So some say he's weak, others say no, it's okay. So you have, if we take the view of those who say it's okay, that alone is sufficient. But you say furthermore, you have the authentic mursal hadith, which was hadith number 220 that we just did before this one, which supports its meaning as well. So when the two hadith are brought together, it raises its level to the level of acceptability and authenticity. So any arguments that the person wanted to bring up has been sufficiently answered in that way. Let's move on to the next chapter. Babu admi fasad al-ma'i bi mawti shay'in laysa lahu damun sa'ilun fihi. The chapter that if you have a creature that does not have flowing blood and it dies in water, then it does not make the water impure. So let's read the hadith and then you can understand it a bit better. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا وقع الذباب في إناء أحدكم فليغمسه كله ثم ليطرحه فإن في أحد جناحيه شفاء وفي الآخر داء. رواه البخاري. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that if a fly falls into your container, meaning your container of water, then فَلْيَغْمِسُ كُلُّهُ. Now, whether this is your container of water to drink, whether this is your bowl of soup that you're eating, whether this be your water for wudu, whatever the case may be, فَلْيَغْمِسْهُ كُلُّهُ. Dip the fly entirely into the water. And ثُمَّ لِيَطْرَحْهُ. Thereafter, take the fly out and throw him away. Because فَإِنَّ فِي أَحَدِ جَنَاحَيْهِ شِفَاءٌ. Because on the one wing of the fly is a shifa, is a cure, وَفِي الْآخَرِ دَاءٌ. And on the other is a disease. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith. Now, one thing which the ulama have mentioned is that you will find when a fly falls into a particular drink, unless it lays around inside the water and kicks around for a long time before it dies, generally if it falls into something, you'll find that it falls with one wing and the other wing will generally be out. Now, the wing which tends to go in tends to be, for the most part, the wing containing the disease. Hence why now you dip it. Now, irrespective, and I'll add this on, irrespective of, let's say, for example, you find out that the disease is under the left wing and you see that only the right wing fell inside, even then you will dip him fully in. You will not come and say, well, it's that wing which fell in, so it's good. No. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, dip him inside. So we dip it inside and we don't worry about other stuff. Now, it took over 1,000 and something years for science to come and understand such things. There was a Dr. Nabih Daesh in Riyadh. He conducted an experiment on this to verify this, not because he disbelieved in it, but as a Muslim wanting to also prove it to the world. So he took bacterial cultures of sterilized fluid, which he left there. And then he had a fly falling into it without being immersed fully. And he had others where he had it immersed once, and another batch where the fly was immersed twice, and another batch where the fly was immersed thrice. Thereafter, he tested the results of all of these bacteria now, these cultured bacteria. And the results showed that the bacterial colonies from these tests, the first batch where the fly was only partially dipped in, though that batch was flooded with bacteria. Now, whether you want to call it the disease, what type of bacteria, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there is Latin names for all of these type of illnesses that they've given to it. But anyway, so he found that the first batch where he had it fall partially in, they were thriving on bacteria. And he found the batch where the fly was dipped in once to be clean. And the one where it was dipped in twice was cleaner. And the one where it was dipped in thrice was the cleanest of the lot. So, when you dip him in, maybe you don't cover the entire wing. So what it showed is that as the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us 1400 years ago, on the one wing is a disease, on the other wing is its cure. So when it is dipped in, they counter one another. So the cure beats the disease, and thus the tea, the cool drink, whatever it is, become pure. So, I mean, that was from a medical perspective. Coming back to the issue, let's read the next hadith before going further. So, because it's the last one of the chapter, and it will at least be able to put things into its correct perspective. So, hadith number 223. عن بقية حدثني سعيد بن أبي سعيد الزبيدي عن بشر بن منصور عن علي بن زيد بن جدعان عن سعيد بن المسيب عن سلمان رضي الله عنه قال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Now, just read the sanad first. Baqiyya narrates from Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id al-Zubaydi, from Bashir ibn Mansur, from Ali ibn Zayd ibn Jud'an, from Imam Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, from Hazrat Salman al-Farisi رضي الله عنه, who said, قال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, that Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم told him, يا سلمان أو سلمان رضي الله عنه, كل طعام وشراب وقعت فيه دابة ليس لها دم فماتت فيه فهو حلال أكله وشربه ووضوءه. رواه الدارقطني في سننه. Okay, I'll read the rest afterwards. So the hadith itself, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, O Salman radiyallahu anhu, any food or drink wherein a creature which has no flowing blood, a creature falls into it and it dies therein, then that food and drink, it is halal to eat it, to drink it, or at least in this case in the water, it is halal to drink it, it is halal to make wudu from it, and obviously if it's water, if it's some other food thing, it is halal to eat it. In other words, these things are not regarded as being impure. And this stems beyond the point of flies. Now, the issue of submersing it applies to a fly. It doesn't apply to other creatures. So, for example, especially in the world we live today, a person is always plagued by ants. So you find that there's ants all over the place. Now you happen to have some food and the ants are crawling all over it. Now, some ants die, some ants, he couldn't get out of the airy hole of your cake and he just died in there. Now, if you were to eat that cake, brush that ant out and eat the cake is 100% halal. If, for example, you come and there's what they call them, fruit flies, or those little type of nets, and that one has fallen into, you left some cool drink out there, it fell inside, it died. That cool drink is clean to drink. Some people will be like, no, throw it away because of natural dislike from wanting to drink it. But from a Shari'i perspective, that water, that cool drink is pure, halal, clean. And if it were to be water, you could make wudu with it. You could drink it. You could do whatever you want to cook your food with it too. It doesn't affect the purity in any way or form. So likewise, if you happen to find your bowl of soup there and the ants climbed in and they died because the soup was hot, you dish the ants out, you eat the soup, doesn't affect it at all. So irrespective of what type of creature it is, whether it be a fly or not a fly, Dabba is the word Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used, a creature which does not have flowing blood. So therefore, when these type fall into your things and they die. So once again, coming back to the question of the pool, you have a lot of, I forget the name of those water skimmers, those bugs that live on the water like that. So you have all of these type. They don't affect the purity of the water in the least. We'll only consider outside creatures that don't belong in water, that now died. A cat was coming to drink from the water, it slept, it fell into the water, it drowned. That water is impure. A bird came by and it fell there, and a piranha came out and bit its foot. So, it got a shock and it fell in the water and drowned. That water is impure because these are creatures that don't belong in the water. They fell therein and died. You had a sheep which you had in your yard for Qurbani, and the sheep got lost, walked through the gate, found your pool and fell inside, fell to the bottom and he drowned. That water is impure. Like that. Those creatures that don't belong in water, that have flowing blood, they die therein, then the water is impure. So to finish off, Imam Daraqutni rahimahullah is the narrator of this hadith in his Sunan, and he says وقال لم يروه غير بقية عن سعيد بن أبي سعيد الزبيري وهو ضعيف ورواه ابن علي في الكامل وأعله بسعيد هذا وقال هو شيخ مجهول وحديثه غير محفوظ. So Imam Daraqutni rahimahullah, he said, this narration is not reported except from Baqiyya, who narrates from Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id al-Zubaydi, and this Sa'id is a weak narrator. Imam ibn Adi, in his Kitab al-Kamilu fi Du'afa al-Rijal, he says that there's a fault with this narration on account of the same Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id, and he said the reason is because he's a Shaykh al-Majhul. He's an unknown Shaykh. We don't know who he is. So when you have an unknown person in the chain, you can't regard it as being authentic. So he says he's an unknown person and his ahadith are not safe. It's not proven to be authentic because we don't know who he is. But this is the words of Imam Ibn Adi, and this is why Jarh wa Ta'dil is an ijtihadi science. So you'll find differences of opinion. So Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi speaks now. He says, قلت قال المحقق في الفتح وأما سعيد بن أبي سعيد هذا فذكره الخطيب وقال واسم أبيه عبد الجبار وكان ثقة فانتفت الجهالة والحديث مع هذا لا ينزل عن الحسن. Okay. He says here that the Muhaqqiq of Al-Fath, Fath al-Qadir, he says in the Kitab that Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id, the narrator in the Kitab over here, he's not an unknown person, because Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi has mentioned him in his Kitab, and Khatib al-Baghdadi mentioned that Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id, Abu Sa'id, Sa'id's father, his real name was Abdul Jabbar, and wakana thiqa, and he was trustworthy, reliable. So Imam Ibn Adi may not have known him, but Khatib al-Baghdadi knew him. So therefore, Imam Ibn Adi is saying that, and this is how you also work through from a Jarh wa Ta'dil perspective when two muhaddithin differ. They need to give their reasonings for why they grade a narrator as being weak. So you will look at a case like this, where Imam Ibn Adi says, I don't know him, he's an unknown person. Khatib al-Baghdadi said, I know him and his father and he's reliable. Whose verdict would we take? We would take Khatib al-Baghdadi, because Imam Ibn Adi was speaking from a point of not knowing him. Khatib al-Baghdadi was speaking knowing exactly who he is. So fantafatil jahala, him being an unknown person according to Imam Ibn Adi falls away, because Khatib al-Baghdadi knows him, and Khatib al-Baghdadi is one of the Imams of Hadith. So he says, so a Hadith on this category doesn't fall lower than being Hasan. And as you know, a Hadith which is Hasan is suitable to derive ahkam and everything from. قلت وأما بقية فهو ابن الوليد ثقة من رجال مسلم إلا أنه مدلس وقد صرح بالتحديث والباقون كلهم ثقات وإن كان في بعضهم كلام لا يضر فالحديث حسن. And Zafar Ahmad Thanvi now comments, he says بقية, the narrator who narrated from Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id, he is Baqiya ibn al-Walid. He's a reliable person who's a narrator that Imam Muslim rahimahullah himself reports from. Only thing is, Baqiya ibn al-Walid is a mudallis. So one of the conditions of accepting a hadith from a mudallis is the mudallis has to say so-and-so narrated to me. So in this case, Baqiya said, Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id narrated to me. So we explicitly stated it, so that at least in this narration is removed, and because Baqiya is a truthful person, therefore the narration becomes authentic. So and besides Baqiya ibn al-Walid, the rest of the narrators are also regarded as being thiqa, even if you may find some ikhtilaf with regards to them. One imam say this, one imam say that, but there's others who differ with them. So there's ikhtilaf of one muhaddith grading him weak and another grading him strong. This doesn't harm the authenticity. فَالْحَدِيثُ حَسَنٌ. So the hadith is hasan. It is suitable, it is reliable, you can derive your ahkam from it. And that's the end of the chapter. We will stop on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. In our next class, we will start from this next chapter with hadith number 226 on page 269. But until next time, we will end for now, and we say, وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ وَسَلَّمَ وَبَارَكَ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا مُحَمَّدٍ سُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ نَشْهَدُ أَن لَّا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.